All right. Can you hear me, Christian? You too, man.
We were
Can you
just
see what's it called? Like the flannelograph? How do you pronounce it? Going back to the Sunday
Sunday
school
school
in the
today.
50s.
You know what? I just turned this mic as my
Oh, yeah.
speakers. It didn't work, so I don't know what
Well,
happened.
it could be a mic and a speaker at the same time? That doesn't
That's what.
sound...
So
That's
Yeti
technology going too far.
Yeti let me down. Yet again.
Yet
Let
again.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a guest today. Tell us, Arnie.
Well, I think you could say it's a bit of a special guest since it's my brother Jogvan, my older brother. Technically, my brother from another mother.
Oh.
That's a longer story I can tell you, but maybe we can get into it during the interview. I don't know,
Sure.
but I can tell you at least about it after our recording is done, maybe. But yeah, so he's my older brother. Until a couple of years ago, he was the full-time pastor of a church here in the Faroes. He's stepped back, more of a pastor emeritus, maybe, at the moment. He works for Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, travels around Europe. I never know where he is when I call him. Like, he's in Krakow or Milano or, like, yeah, all over the place.
Training pastors, right? And
yes, yeah, training pastors to sort of, what do you call it? After the whole sort of evangelistic campaign is done, to reach out and for other people that maybe get saved and so on. Yeah, that's part of what he does, at least. But we can just ask him about it. It's even better.
Absolutely.
But yeah, but it's cool
his
yeah.
sermon that he sent he seems like it's kind of just, I can feel the passion in his voice, and it's
Yes.
more, he's a kind of an itinerant. He's also coming alongside the Billy Graham Revival Associations.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about he's doing more revival work, maybe, or what would you say?
Well, I mean, probably in his work for Billy Graham, right? But I think even though I don't know how much of the Faroese you could understand, but you could definitely tell from the sort of the tone and maybe the tempo that this wasn't a revival service. Like, he doesn't get very worked up. It's very sort of reflective, kind of gentle might be a good word,
Are you saying
sort
that
of-
revivals are when we try to work people up? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Pure emotional manipulation.
Okay.
No, but it's a style. You know what I mean.
Yes. Okay. Well, good. And his name, tell me, I just don't want to get it wrong. Jogvan.
Well, actually, it's pronounced Jogvan.
Jogvan, there was.
Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe I don't know how he's used to pronouncing it in English, but in Faroese it's Jogvan. So,
as his brother, would you say this is a good sermon, or is this above average?
Do you think? Well, I would say it's a bad sermon. No, it's a great sermon. It's a great sermon. Yeah, very Jogvan as well.
Very Jogvan.
Quite personal as he gets into like some like his relationship to our dad, for example. Quite introspective and reflective.
Yeah,
So
I was wondering about that. We're gonna have our own little therapy session, the three of us, maybe.
Let's do it.
And I'm wondering, he was pastoring in Tórshavn or over near Goethe?
No, Tórshavn.
Tórshavn, okay. In the big city.
Yeah.
All the cultural temptations and idols.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Babylon in the North Atlantic.
Are people thinking of it that way? Like Tórshavn is kind of
a little bit.
The big
I mean,
city?
it's the same divide in Alden West, isn't it? Like the urban secular sort of centers, and then you have the countryside, which is more conservative and maybe still a bit more Christian. That's definitely a dynamic here in the Faroes as well, especially like the northern part of the Faroes, where I live, farther up north, much more conservative, much more, actually religious, going to church and things, actually believing.
Yeah, when we were there, there's a first conference with TGC Norden that we've done that we had not in kind of the big capital city.
Exactly.
So it just felt different. Like, it felt in a good way, like these are Christians gathering to be inspired, and they know, they're committed and they know each other, and it's very good. All right.
Awesome.
Well, looking forward to having him on.
Let's do it.
All right. We are here now with Jogvan. And as I said in the intro, Jogvan is my brother, and he's a former pastor. But Jogvan, can you just introduce yourself?
Of course. What a great privilege it is to be here with you guys. Shortly, I'm Jogvan. My wife's name is Un. We are three grown-up children. I've been a pastor for many years. My wife and I started the church 23 years ago. Been there since. I stepped down from senior pastor leadership about 3 years ago now, and now I'm working with the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, and especially in Europe, traveling from city to city, preparing for festivals. And so I still live in the Faroes, and I travel back and forth every month between the Faroes and Europe. And so whenever I'm home, of course, I'm preaching, I'm teaching, I'm encouraging, especially younger leaders. I believe in making way for a younger generation so that we as more mature leaders can be their support and encourage them to lead and so on. But preaching would be probably my primary passion and gift. And then definitely evangelism is something that is very, very heavy on my heart. When you hear me preaching, you will always kind of see the theme of God's grace, but also the need to give your life to Him. So, and I think that is really my passion, amongst many, many other things. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Let me ask you one question. If you had one thing to say that you've learned from pastors around Europe, are all pastors really the same, or what?
I would say generally there is commonality, and the commonality would be that there is a passion for people, and there's a passion for leading people to the Great Shepherd. But that is expressed through all kinds of personalities and backgrounds and all those different things. And I think that's the beauty with pastors. One thing maybe that pastors have also in common is that we tend to be selfish. We tend to be controlling. We tend to be very territorial, and we have the temptation to build our own kingdom a lot. And So these are things that we need help in. I see that a lot. My church, how many people come to my church, and why do you go to that church, and why did you leave us and go there, and all these different things, And I think what we need to learn is that we need to be more kingdom-minded and realize that we belong to one king and one kingdom, and we serve in different areas in different ways and with different creativities that God has given us. But ultimately, we bow down to one, and we lead people to one, and that's what we need to learn. So there are many good sides with pastors, but there are many, many dangerous and actually very fleshly sides to being a pastor as well.
You had an agenda, you can totally. But I have a hypothesis on this, that the secularism in Europe, and especially the Nordics, contributes to this problem. First of all, we're more worldly, but also I think it feels like any given week I could just collapse because it's so small, it's so fragile, the culture around us is so hostile. So it adds whatever tendency, or even more so.
Yeah.
Would you say that's true?
Oh, definitely. I mean, so let me just very shortly give you just my heart a little bit when it comes to my church, because I started the church with my wife, of course, and it becomes very, you take ownership of it so much that you take ownership over Christ. And especially when you come to building, you build a church building, and it becomes kind of my kingdom. And God broke that in me. He simply broke me. And he reminded me that, yes, you are building a great building, which will be a beautiful place for your church. But I do not want that to be to become the primary thing that you are thinking about. And in 2010, he broke my heart for that. And it had to do with financial things because Europe or the world broke down financially in 2008. And the results of that were seen later on and so on. And suddenly we didn't have money to build or anything. The Lord just helped me just kind of to let it go, you know. And that changed many, many things for me, even to the point where I said when I was 54, I'm going to step down now from senior pastor leadership. Just number one, because that's what I needed to do. Number two, I hope it will be an example to other elders and pastors to not carry them out because of their age, but actually say that I trust the Lord to actually I will step down and let others lead so that I can be a support and encourager for the younger generation. And since I did that, the church has grown even more since I left. And what a joy that has been for me to see that and be a part of that. Exactly. Exactly.
And for you to have this brokenheartedness as a blessing to other pastors. I like to say it's always good to think of, pastor, how you can go into Yoda mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. So it's amazing in my work now, where I work a lot with churches and pastors, how I can take my experiences as a pastor and speak to European pastors as a pastor, you know, to just to help and speak into situations and learn myself even more, you know, about how we think, how, like you said, how territorial we are, how individualistic we are, and how the Lord is still gracious in that and works on us to just open up even more for each other, to that oneness, to realize that we are serving one King and we bow down to him. Yeah.
The sermon that we're gonna the sermon that we want to talk about, you mentioned how important God's grace is, and the title, it's a series of sermons, right? The Life of Grace, or Nøye Livet.
Yeah, Life of Grace.
Yeah, and we're gonna look at listen a little bit to one of those sermons, but can you just give us a little bit of an impression of,
Yeah,
how did the
sure.
sermon series come about, how many sermons,
Well,
and
I
so on?
mean, one thing that has characterized my preaching all the way, as long as I have preached, is God's grace, the freedom that we are given in the finished work of Christ, and finally the balance of what grace and freedom means in relation to being a doulos, being servants, belonging to a Lord and a King in our lives. And this series is really about understanding our salvation based on the Trinity. So I talked about what has Jesus done in order to save us? What has the Holy Spirit done in order to make that salvation something amazingly beautiful, and how it works into our life? And then I talked about the Father, and I used the parable of the loving Father. I don't use the name the prodigal son, because I don't believe the parable is about the son. I believe it's about the Father. And so that was the third part of the series. 2 sermons on the Father and his grace and his heart and his way. So that is the foundation blocks for the series. What the Son has done, what the Spirit has done, what the Father has done in our salvation, and how they are then examples for us to live out that grace that they have poured into us. So after I finished the second sermon of the Father, I am now focused 5 or 6 sermons on how does that then look practically in the way that we live as Christians and pour out that grace upon others around us. So I'm still in the middle of the series.
All right. One thing that I noticed listening to it was it's a very personal sermon, really. Obviously, you go through the text and you talk about what Jesus has to say through the parable of either father or son, or sons, however you want to angle it. But you start out with a story from your own life, and throughout the sermon, you reflect again and again on sort of what does it mean to be a father or a parent? And you also end with some reflections on that. Maybe we could just play that clip, maybe from that story in the beginning, and then you can tell us a little bit more, maybe about that example you used and
Sure.
how you use it in the sermon.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I obviously know your story, but you're telling a story from a period in your life where you were a bit of a prodigal son. Can you say that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it is all based on in a broken story. And one thing that I have done throughout my preaching, especially the later years, is that if you want to be an effective preacher, you need to involve your own life into it, and be humble enough and broken enough to share your broken heart, and not only stories about how great you are, but also stories about how broken you are, because I think greatness is in brokenness. And you become personal without pouring everything out, but enough to illustrate the text of the Bible. As you know, Arnie, I lost my mother when I was 2, so abandonment has been a heading of my life. Abandoned child, which also meant that I actually lost my father and 2 brothers for quite a number of years, because I was placed in my mother's home, and while my father and my 2 other brothers were in Goethe, where Arne lives today. So I was separated both from my mother, but also from my father and 2 brothers for a number of years, even though I saw them regularly. So the way that I learned to live was, I will not let anyone come too close, because I don't want to be broken again. I don't want to be abandoned again. So that leads into a life of extreme isolation and extreme individualism in many ways, even though I didn't know that at that time. So, and the way that I kind of melted all that together in the way to live was that everything was great, and I was really good at some things. I was a good musician. I was good with people. I was friendly. I didn't show all the frustration and wrath that I had inside me. Sometimes it came out on the wrong people. Hurt people. But what it really led down to was that I was a lonely, broken heart, gentle, friendly, smiling young man that was totally alone. And there comes a point, especially when God's hand is upon you, and He says that I have my plans for you. I want you to be a tool in my hands. But as one preacher said, God will not use you greatly until He has broken you deeply. And that brokenness just began to take over. And when I stood in the kitchen that evening with my dad, and he asked me, Jogvan, what is it really that you're longing for? It just came out, I need to be held, because I hadn't been held by anyone for so many years. And I think that was a part of the story for God to take the layers of stone of my heart, to break it, and the holding of a father is something that is, it is deep, it is life-changing when it's real, and it always was. I was just never willing to really accept it until God had taken me to the place where the cracks just couldn't hold anymore, And that became, maybe not the beginning, I think it had begun before, but at least a continuation of the story where God began to just break me and break my heart, and to the point where I rededicated my life to Christ. And it is important as a minister never to forget where you came from and who you were, because who you were defines who you are today. And if you deny who you were, and if you deny the dark stories of your life, you only become half, So even though the brokenness does not, or the hardness and all those things don't define me anymore, shame, abandonment, anger, and pain, and all these things, they don't define me anymore, but they are part of my story. and they define in some way what I became. And I think the beauty of the prodigal son who was at home and he went away and came back home is that that is the story of all of us. And the worldliness that comes out in morals and ethics can be very different from story to story. This one was quite extreme, to end up with the pigs, which for a Jew was the ultimate, bottom
Yeah,
to
eating the
reach.
food of the pigs,
Exactly.
even lower than just being,
Exactly.
with the pigs. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it becomes a place where you say, I need to make a decision in my life. And even though we are many times not able to do it on our own, God leads people into our lives that will push us to have to take a decision on where we go. Yeah.
One thing that I thought about when I was listening to the sermon and reflecting on it afterwards is this idea of a journey. I think often we are quite impatient, maybe especially with other people. Or maybe it's a temptation in relation to evangelism. Make a decision, come on. But very, very often we can experience ourselves or observe in others how we really need to take that journey. Because in a way, the younger brother wasn't home until he had gone away and come back home. As you say in the sermon, like he wasn't lost. He didn't sort of just wander. He left home because there was something wrong that he didn't want to be there anymore. And also, even though you don't in this sermon don't talk about the older son, there's a sense in which that he was there, but he wasn't really there. A similar journey would probably have been good for that that older brother as well.
Yeah.
But I thought about sanctification. No, so sorry. Sanctification. That's what I'm thinking about. The journey of how God makes us more into what He wants us to be, right?
Mm.
And often that journey takes us through the valley of the shadow of death, really, right? Through all sorts of bad stuff that, on the face of it would be good if we didn't experience that stuff, didn't do that stuff. But God uses it to bring us back.
Mm. I mean, that is so true. It is the journey that defines who we become, and it was a deliberate decision for him on that part of the journey that he had come to leave home. So his journey was before that journey, and somehow that's what I love with the parable. Jesus does not tell us why he left, because there can be so many reasons for leaving, and it almost seems like that he didn't hate his father, because he stayed for a few days after he had made the command to get his part of the inheritance. And it's almost like the father has time even to talk to him about where he's going. And maybe the father even has the experience that the son is now going to have, and it is like you said in the beginning, sometimes in order to be saved, we need to realize that we are lost. And, and sometimes in order to be saved, we need to realize that we are on a journey. And sometimes we are so, when we talk about journeys, we are so defined on a goal or a purpose that we don't see all the little details on the journey, And when we stop and we come to different points in our journey, for example, he left and he had plenty. Okay, so he experienced that, to have everything, which attracted all his friends, and he became the popular guy, and that did something in him, right? But then he also learns the fact that as his money goes down, his friends also leave. And that means that there is a sense of him realizing that actually people are not interested in me, they're just interested in what I have. And that gives him, on the journey, a picture of who we really are as human beings. Many of us are really not interested in knowing God, we are just interested in using God.
The benefits.
I use God for my benefits, but I'm not really interested in intimacy with Him. And as soon as he saw that he was losing the people around him, he realized that, wow. And then he comes to the point where he says, there's nothing else for me to do. I need to find something to do. I'm totally helpless in a faraway country. And Jesus takes it to the extreme, and he says, well, you talk to that farmer of pigs, and you go there and you feed them. Ended up, like you said, eating his. If he didn't come to that point, I wonder if he would have just wandered and keep on wandering. So I believe that the beauty of God's hand in our life is that he takes us to the point where we hit bottom and there's nowhere else to go. And then he, by his grace, whispering into our lives. And I think it's the story of the beauty of the Father, that the voice of the Father was still in his head, not that judgmental voice, but that graceful voice. That son, you are always my son, and you will always be my son. Don't forget where home is, wherever you go. And that prompted in him that longing to come back, not back to, comfort and materialism and all those different things, because he's even willing to say, I just want to be a hired servant. Can I just get into the house somehow? And of course, then we have the surprise element of the story that he actually gets more than he thought that he deserved.
Is that resonates, I think, with Christians, European Christians, high church. I was born, I was baptized. I don't know exactly when, but I'm on a journey. I'm on this gradual journey. It's a process. But I like also what you said, Jogvan, about being lost. Something I think is a harder thing for Nordic people.
Yeah.
Lost. We have all the money and experiences we need. How can we bring base of this message into people living the good life?
Exactly, living the good life, and also like Denmark and the Faroes, Scandinavia as a whole, the happiest countries in the world, everything in our social system that secures us, and all these different things, money and materialism, individualism, and all these different things, the good life. And I think one place to meet those individuals, which we are all together in, is that ultimately, when you look into people's lives, there's always that longing for more. There's always that feeling of this is not enough. And there's always that feeling of having to prove myself that I can make it on my own, and that's why I think the story of this father is amazing, that the father was loving enough to let his son experience total helplessness. And I think sometimes churches and pastors and Christians we are too eager to jump in to help others too early, And I think that's one way to help people in our circumstances is don't be too eager and don't jump too fast into a story to solve the problem, but actually be patient enough. And by the way, that is one of the fruit of the Spirit, long-suffering enough to let people feel the pain that they're in, especially when they come.
Like curling
exactly,
parenting, right?
Exactly.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. And also that means that this father had such a love for his son and understanding of himself that he was willing to have a broken heart, and I think the application for us as fathers is that sometimes we are too early to help our children from their faults. We need to let them burn themselves sometimes, and that is painful for us as fathers to stand there and look at it, but sometimes that's the best way for them to learn that.
In addition to preaching, I was just in 1 Corinthians 5 last week about how Paul says to hand them over.
Yeah.
He's actually, of course, it is a form of active discipline, but it's also just letting them feel the consequences of losing the fellowship. I love the sermon. I think it's a very good sermon. I think it's a very biblical sermon. Arnie sent me the notes. I understood, 50% with my Danish, Swedish. So
yeah.
But it's very personal. Theocentricity, quoting John Piper, theocentric in our preaching. A big God that shines through. It's not about, I love what you said, it's not about the prodigal son. And you're in good company there, right? Wrote a book called prodigal God. It's
Prodigal
about
God.
Prodigal God,
God,
exactly.
yes. And I love Keller's. He says it's not just about theocentricity; it's actually about the centrality of the Savior as well. Christ is saying,
Exactly.
he's saying, look at the first story. There's a coin, and then what happens? There's a search for the coin. Then there's a lost sheep. Then what happens? There's a search. And what's missing from the third story? There's a lost son, or he's on a journey. We'll say he's whatever. There's no search. And so Keller says Jesus is himself in the story as the you Pharisees, you religious ones, you should be the true and you should be the older brother going to the lost flock of Israel. But Jesus says, that's what I've done. I've come from heaven. I'm the true and better older brother. But I want to one up Tim Keller. Are you ready for this? It will never happen. It will never happen. Is there in eternity, and we miss him dearly. But I think one thing I don't remember, if I don't think he does. What about the true and better younger brother? And I think there's this interesting point at the father goes out to the younger brother and pleads with him, says, what you're doing is tragic. Your brother he is alive.
Yes.
We have been waiting and longing for his ship, and now you're here, sour in your heart and bitter. But I'm thinking, what if the younger brother came out from the party, the great party that's happening, music is bumping, and like, and the younger brother,
barbecue.
and the younger brother comes and says, brother, this is not without you. And in a way, that is what Jesus,
Amen.
That's what he's doing. He's saying, you religious types, you think that you understand the law. You don't know the heart of God, but we want you in the kingdom with us, because it's not the same without you. Yeah.
That's a beautiful, beautiful angle on that. Definitely. I think Henry Nouwen's book, The Prodigal Son, I think what's beautiful with that story is that he leads us kind of to actually to become people like the Father, and but he says that we are not really able to become like the Father unless we experience being the younger brother and the older brother, and I think that's a beautiful when we go back to journey, as we talked about before. In order to mature, in order to be compassionate people, in order to be understanding people, we need to feel the lostness of the younger brother, and we also need to feel the jealousy and the self-righteousness of the older brother. And when we are open and we are strong enough to say, this is true of me, then God begins to develop a heart that becomes like the Father, because he has been on that journey himself, and he knows it and he feels it. He has been through everything that we have been going through, and that makes him a true compassionate Father. I went to St. Petersburg to sit under the painting of Rembrandt, the prodigal returning home. And my temptation when I preach the sermon is that I want to share the insight into the painting and compare that with with the story, and just like Henry Nouwen did. So I very deliberately in these two sermons that I preached in my church, I never mentioned anything about that. I just wanted to concentrate on the text itself. But there are many, many beautiful truths. That truth that you brought up there with the younger brother going out to the older brother is a beautiful, beautiful angle also. Thank you so much for that.
Position into our little ending bit here.
Yeah.
But we always like to ask our guests and each other what we're reading.
Okay.
We're reading right now. What's on? Maybe a little bit about what you're getting from what you're reading. Arne, you got something new, you said?
Yes. I just started the other day reading Digital Liturgies by Samuel D. James. I've been enjoying his Substack for the last couple of weeks. And I've seen that book. It's got a really nice cover. Just started reading it. He talks a little bit. Maybe I'll be super surprised by it, but I think it's sort of in the vein of James K. Smith, that sort of You are what you love. That's sort of how we are formed by the technology that we use and how we use it, which is, I think, is a super relevant thing to talk about, something that I think about quite a lot. So enjoying that.
I have 3 books on my shelf right now. One is reflections of the life story of Leonardo da Vinci, and learning the way that he thought about things and so on. Another one is called Pressure Off, and it's by Larry Crabb. I don't know if you know that name. And this book is about, it really related maybe to what we talked today about also, is that there's so much pressure in our generation on what it means to be a Christian, especially living a good life. That we try to live up to do and do and do in order to receive God's blessing. And doing that, there's so much pressure on being a Christian and live like this, and expectations and purposes and goals and everything that we try to strive for in the Christian life. And we are under such stress and pressure because of that. And he just turns it around and says, how about just going into an intimacy with God where all these things are left behind, and everything is about just enjoying God and his presence in your life. It's a great book. And the third book and this is not the first time I read this book, it's by an author called Dan Allender, and the title is Leading with a Limp.
Mm.
And it's about the story of Jacob when he wrestled with God, and how God changed his name from Jacob to Israel, and what that means when God comes into our lives and breaks us and changes our names and identity. So those are the 3 books right now on my shelf.
I admire says that they're rereading a book. I'm always like, oh, that one I need to remember.
Yeah.
I'm new second book in Danish. It's called Hensides Orden, which means beyond order.
Mhm.
And it was interesting to me because there was an article this week about how Sven Brinkmann, a very famous Danish psychologist who some people call the Danish Jordan Peterson, he turned down an opportunity to have with Jordan Peterson. And everyone in Denmark was like, look at what we were doing. We're turning on the big hotshot, and that's way to go for our guy. And so I was like, oh, okay, well. And according to Sven Brinkmann, he has things that are very different than Jordan Peterson, but they do represent a similar kind of vein of. But from the book itself, there's a couple of things that he goes to. One about how learning theory there's become very popular. This idea that we have different learning styles. But he says he gives this anecdote of a PhD researcher. She specialized in this topic, and basically in her research realized there's very little scientific evidence for this being true.
Yeah.
And actually, people who learn and they take traditional like notes and appear to tests, they perform much better in the long run. And it just sounds so good. You can learn through it's like, and so that was really interesting to me. And she, as a result of her discovery, changed her whole career and now she's very much against all those things. So
that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Good for preachers to know, eh? Let's
It
just
is good for
stand
preachers to
there and
know.
talk.
monologue.
There you go.
You don't need any sort of help. Just talk.
That's where we're called to shepherd to. Well, this has been a good conversation, and we thank you so much for your time, and hope to see you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's a good brother you've got.
I like him. I mean,
I noticed.
Yeah, that was a good talk.
Very good. Yes, the contrast in hair amounts was very drastic.
Yes, yeah, that's
No
very
hair.
true. He's
got
quite
lots of hair.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we achieve a good balance between the two of us.
The Balanced Brothers. No, his heart on particularly just the brokenness we need to have in ministry and as preachers and just as in our walks with Christ, that seemed to be coming up again. Just God breaks us, and that is for our joy in a way.
Definitely, yeah. I think I thought of the word authenticity throughout, but I don't know. It feels like I don't know, sort of a stupid word. Although but I think the that's kind of what the older brother needs, especially, don't you think? And that I think that's kind of a temptation. At least I observe it as being a temptation for a lot of us, sort of church people. You've grown up in it, you know all the unwritten rules, all that sort of stuff, and everyone is kind of has a lot invested in this sort of veneer of respectability and having it all together. And being broken is a very good sort of counter to that. We need to that sort of intimacy that Jegman talked about. You can't really have that if you're playing a role, if you don't let go and actually become broken, become real.
Mm. I
I thought that
also
was
thought it
good.
was good to hear him piece together where this sermon fit in the series. I love that
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
he's preaching the Trinitarian. He's kind of theologically preaching in a way too, the different ways the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit are involved in our salvation.
That's true. Yeah.
And also the practical side. Of course, he was going to spend a number of messages on that. Very good, and
Yeah.
good man, and happy to make his acquaintance.
Too bad those sermons are all in one of the smallest languages in the world. No one can really enjoy the benefits of those sermons. Only like, I don't know how many people speak Faroese, like 75,000 people in the world or something like that.
But all of them are listening today, so
Yes,
that's
of course,
okay.
of course.
Yes.
Thinking about it, I'm just, sympathizing with all the non-Faroese speakers. One thing that I wanted to mention, I just remembered as we were talking that TGC Norden kind of launched with an article, if that's the right, I don't know if you'll be okay with me characterizing it as that, but Colin Hansen wrote a really good article about the Nordics just before the first conference, where he references the prodigal son. Do you remember that? What if the prodigal never comes home in the Nordics was the
That's
title
right.
of it. We should
Yep.
link that article in the show notes or whatever it's called. Just remember that article.
Yes, you're right. Very much on theme. Yeah, and he refers to the Pontoppidan's play Le Coupé, or sorry,
Exactly.
the book, which is a great story, a great piece of literature. Unfortunately, most younger Danes, are not reading it. But that's just because
it's a thick book, eh?
and people just aren't reading these days.
No,
So
that's very true. It's very
that's just,
true.
but that's why we got to keep on bringing up the books. So anyway,
Yes. Yeah.
great conversation, brother. Always good.
Yes.
See you next
Yeah,
time.
you too, man. Yes.
And where can where can the listeners find us?
I mean, if they are listening right now, they know at least something about where they can listen to it. But we're on all the platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever people can find podcasts. But I think maybe even more relevant is that we are on social media as well. Just if you search for TGC Norden, you'll find TGC Norden, and that's how you can get a hold of us. If you have a comment, a question, something like that, that'd be cool to hear.
Be great to hear from you.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, we trust that the Lord will give you grace in your
good life,
good life, and your bad life.
Yes.
When he breaks it too. Yeah.
If there's grace from God in your life, it is good, however bad it might be.
That was very clean.
I think it's